Thank you, Catherine.
Hey, good morning. Thank you very much, Dawn, for inviting me. And good morning, everyone. I'm very happy to get to see you. So many of you I used to get to see on a fairly regular basis. So it's nice to see you. And I really appreciate your interest in this topic. So I'm going to take a few moments to talk about what's happening at the state redistricting level, how it can impact us, and make a very strong recommendation for everyone on this call to get involved in the coming days. We are not in we're way past the 11th hour when it comes to state redistricting. So I also want to thank Dawn and the chamber team, as well as Bob Warner and many of you individuals. Since about early spring with Hoge Fenton, just sort of pro bono, I've been monitoring the state redistricting level, and Dawn and both Bob have submitted comments on behalf of the chamber and the city, and have engaged the State Redistricting Commission with comments not just about the Livermore area, but the Tri-Valley. And that was very helpful, and we're going to have to do it again in the last few hours that we have left of redistricting. And so I'm talking about the State Redistricting Commission. As Dawn mentioned, they are the ones who write Assembly, Senate, Congressional, and Board of Equalization. I'm not going to talk about the Board of Equalization because it almost does nothing anymore, and there will be no significant changes for those maps. We're going to talk about the legislative maps. Again, what will the districts be at the local legislative level and Congress? And the Redistricting Commission, as you may recall, is not the legislature writing their own maps. You've probably read something about this in the last year. It is an independent commission with an equal number of Democrats and Republicans, and then almost equal number of independents. For the last several months, they've been taking testimony and public comment, as well as data from the census, to try to determine what should be the legislative maps. And I will show you the latest map so you can see how they're affecting the Tri-Valley. They have criteria that is very similar to what our local jurisdictions have, that they have to follow to determine what those district maps will be. These maps will be in place, brace yourself, until 2032. So for the next decade. This is very important, who's going to have our voice and how long these maps will be in place. The criteria they have to use are population. Each of the districts for Congress and each of the districts for Senate and Assembly have to have almost identical population. In fact, at the congressional level, the deviation among districts can be only less than 1%. It's a little bit more wiggle room for Senate and Assembly, but it's very tight for Congress. They also have to take into consideration what I'll just call Voting Rights Act considerations. This is making sure that populations that tend to be underrepresented don't have their voting power diluted. And in fact, if you can find areas where there's a majority of minority, they're called majority-minority districts, that those are more possible. Really doesn't affect our area in the Bay Area, but that is a factor that's very important to them. They have to have districts that are contiguous. Bob was mentioning, when we were talking about Livermore area recreation district, Parks, I hope I got the title right on that one, Dave, how you have to have, geographic continuity, they got to be contiguous. So you can't have a district that's got a little tiny line, but otherwise is totally separated. They also have to take into consideration community of interest testimony. And I'll just say those are not just demographic communities, like who might be from one demographic or socioeconomic background, but they can be other considerations. And that's where our identity as a Tri-Valley is very clearly a community of interest. We advocate together. We have many shared characteristics: economy, water, transportation, housing, wildfire, semi-rural, ag, and suburban characteristics. All those things make us a very much an identity. So Tri-Valley is a community of interest. And finally, they have to do something called nesting. This is really just applicable to the Senate districts, that 2 assembly districts fit within each Senate district. That criterion, by the way, the commission has completely thrown out. So I'm not sure if they're going to try to revisit it. Where is the commission in its process? So in November, about November 15th, they adopted draft maps after months of tinkering with possibilities that local communities weighed in on. Those draft maps are up. I'm going to show them to you in just a moment. And then they had to sort of do nothing for 2 weeks. They had a mandate to only take public comment on the draft maps. And that 2-week period ended yesterday. So this week they are they're having meetings where they're tweaking assembly maps. Each day they're dedicating to a different region. Yesterday was Los Angeles. Today is Bay Area and Sacramento, starting at 11 o'clock today. And for the rest of the week, they're going to do different regions. Next week, they sort of tweak the congressional maps, and the following week is Senate. And then by December 20th, they will have adopted the final maps. So December 20th. That gives them a little bit of wiggle room in case they run late. They have a couple of extra days before Christmas where they've said if they need it, they'll do some more tweaking. And then they submit those maps to the Secretary of State December 27th. Okay, so that's what they're doing. That's the timeline. Let's look at the maps. And I'm going to share my screen here, so hang tight while it's always a little bit of a thing that I either get it right or I don't. So here we go. Pushing share. All right. If Sharon, can you give me a thumbs up if you can see the map? Okay, great. What I'm showing you here is the assembly map. The big takeaway that I should give first is the good news is the commission absolutely got our community's testimony that the Tri-Valley is a community of interest, and we really want to be kept together. And by Tri-Valley, that means all the 5 cities that comprise the Tri-Valley, so Dublin, Pleasanton, Livermore in Alameda County, San Ramon, Danville in Contra Costa County, but the unincorporated areas that are part of our spheres, right? Alamo, the Tassajara Valley, even Sunol, actually. And if you combine those communities, that's 400,000 people. That makes up almost half of an assembly district, more than half an assembly district, almost all of an assembly district, more than half of a congressional, and pretty significant part of a Senate. Okay. The bad news is they keep splitting us up. And when they split us up, the latest maps that they adopted actually split us up by towns. Like, I'm going to give you a demonstration here. So what you can see is the sort of pink part is one assembly district. It has Livermore, half of Pleasanton, combined with Castro Valley, Hayward, Union City, San Lorenzo, and Ashland. Not great, right? We're split from the rest of the Tri-Valley in this map. Why does that matter? Well, hey, the folks to the west of us are perfectly good people. They're fellow Californians, they're good people, but they have very different interests. They're much more urban oriented. They have much more reliance on different transportation methods than we do, tend to have different housing priorities, not entirely, but different housing priorities and needs, different economies. And they've actually submitted testimony saying they don't want to be with the Tri-Valley. So that's fun too. But that's where we have a district right now that if the maps are adopted, we would be split. Also, the reason why this is not great is because the Tri-Valley part of the district, so half of Pleasanton and Livermore, is the minority population in this district, which means the legislator, you hope, will equally advocate for all of their constituents. I like to believe I always did. But, the Tri-Valley is not the greatest, strongest voice making up the majority of that district. And finally, this is of concern because you want to be combined with other communities that have shared interests rather than competing or even opposing interests. And the part of the Bay Area that opposed, for example, Valley Link was the representatives that represented Hayward and Union City to the west of us. Actually, they were some of the only no votes for Valley Link, just by way of example. And you don't want to, it's one thing if you don't have exactly the same priorities, it's different if you're even competing or opposed. So I'm not real thrilled about this map, but I want to alert you to it. The other one is the blue map just above, and I'm going to try to get to that page so you can see. I got to scroll down a little bit here, hang tight. Okay. The rest of the Tri-Valley is written in with La Miranda, which kind of makes sense. They have shared priorities, Walnut Creek, all the way up to Martinez, and as you're getting into crossing the Benicia Bridge. The Tri-Valley here is a significant part of that district, but it's still not the majority population. So that's what's happening at the assembly level. Let me show you our Senate maps. A little bit less of a concern here because we are kept together. This is actually the only legislative map where we are kept together. I'll try to, I don't know if I can get it a little bit bigger for you. We are kept together. We're mixed with much larger populations. You know, Concord alone has almost 150,000 people, but we are at least kept together as a Tri-Valley, which is important. So, you know, I might change how this map is based on feedback the commissioners have given, as well as our own community, but this isn't irrational. By the way, I want to point out before I go to the congressional map, what's at stake here is how strong the Tri-Valley's voice is, not will there be a Republican or Democratic seat. And I really want to emphasize that, because any of the maps that are going to happen for the Bay Area, I feel confident just from a political analysis, they will be very strongly Democratic seats. And we may have the same members representing us for many years, but this is a 10-year map, right? And so you want to make sure that regardless of who next sits in these seats, they have a good close tie to the Tri-Valley. I'm Tri-Valley centric here. So that's what we're looking at. Okay, here's the congressional map. Congress one is also bad. So I'm just going to say bad, because it splits up the Tri-Valley, splitting Dublin in half. This is, it's hard to see on this map. There's other data charts that show it, but this is approximately where Doherty Valley is and Hacienda in Dublin, where it's split in half. So you have a city, Dublin, which already has some east-west divides that we try to get over, split by east and west, and the Tri-Valley split again, and we're again made the smaller population of this purple district. The congressional district, which I think is this next, it's got to go up a map here. The other part of the congressional district here in green, the rest of the Tri-Valley, so Dublin is written in with, you know, Concord, Oakley, Antioch, and the rest of the Tri-Valley area. So that's how these districts look. All right, I'm going to unshare for just a moment and see if there are any. There we go. So you saw the maps. I would like to make a recommendation to you that these maps can be better for us, and they should be, that the Tri-Valley in at least one of the state maps, and right now we have a Senate map that keeps us together, and the federal map, we are contained and whole and not divided. And I think there's very strong arguments to be made for that. Again, as a congressional seat has to have about 760,000 people, and 400,000 in the Tri-Valley is a pretty good chunk of that. That would be ideal. And that would be what I would recommend, that every person on this call next engage in the process. And we have to do it now. Like today, the commission is taking public comment on the assembly map, which I showed you splits us by splitting Pleasanton in half. Next week, they take comment on the congressional map, which is, again, splitting Dublin and the Tri-Valley in half. And any day that they're meeting, they take public comment, and you can give comment about the Tri-Valley. Here's the 3 ways to give comment, and then I'll just open up for questions. One is, and I think it really is the squeaky wheel at this point, I should just say, a lot of political actors all across the state are ginning up commentary because they want to persuade a district to be one way that favors an incumbent or another. I'm very proud that the Tri-Valley has united on across the political spectrum on advocating for the Tri-Valley, and not, you know, we want to be in this person's district or that person or this or that party. That's good. So I think we need to continue doing that. The first way to do this is by calling in while they're having one of their live meetings. You get 2 minutes to make a couple of points. And Dawn, I'm happy to share with you if you want. I think I've shared in the past some suggested talking points. Here's the number to call. Here's the times they're doing public comment. Here's the 2 or 3 things you might want to point out. Obviously, put things in your own words of why you think the Tri-Valley should stay together, but I can help you with that. And I'm happy to share that, but phone, call in. That does mean you might be on hold in the background for quite a long time to get those 2 minutes. But people, these are the maps for the next decade. It really matters. And they really need to hear live testimony. If they think that the Tri-Valley is cool with these maps and they're only hearing from people in Southern California about this district or that, the squeaky wheel is not going to get the grease. So oil or whatever the metaphor is. Okay, so you can call in while they're having a meeting and you get 2 minutes. It goes by fast. Second way is during their meeting, their live meeting, you can actually type up unlimited amount of words your points that you would like them to consider. Keep the Tri-Valley together, especially for the congressional seat. We already are together for one of the state, at least the state Senate seats together, and combine us with communities that are similar and not in competition with us. And the commissioners actually see those comments live as they're meeting. So they're not hearing you on the phone, but they can see them. And the third is to submit that same form of comment, but not during the live meetings. So they'll get a report on it and they'll see them after the fact. But all three of those are super, super easy to do, especially if you have some helpful points ahead of time that you can make your own words. But we have to do it because we had a real impact earlier in the process when a lot of people were providing Tri-Valley testimony. And since the draft maps came out 2 weeks ago, I've been listening to the meetings and almost no one has called in to advocate that the Tri-Valley stay together. I'd hate for them to have the impression that we're good with being split into different pieces. So that's my overview, and I'm happy to answer questions. I don't think I used the whole 20 minutes, Don, but I know that time is of the essence. So I'll be in your hands for if there's time for questions. Okay. Or Sharon. Sorry, Sharon, you're running the meeting.
That's okay. So, Catherine, Scott can you see the chat? I don't know if you can see his question.
I can't. Hold on. Let me get Scott. Scott has a question. Congressional map appears to create a new congressional district through Contra Costa County. Yes, that's right. So there is a new district in Contra Costa. We're not close to it. The district that I showed you, that exists now is probably what I would call Mark DeSaulnier's district. It has Concord. That's where it has a lot of overlap with him. The district that splits Pleasanton would probably be Eric Swalwell's district. The new district is Benicia, Vallejo, and northern Contra Costa County, Highway 4, all the way up into possibly even Fairfield. So yes, it does create a new district. And in fact, a quarter of Congress members don't live in the district they represent, believe it or not, for the whole country. And you might say that's outrageous. Well, some of them live like a mile outside of their district. Others don't live anywhere near. So that's true. There is a new congressional district being created. It's not close enough to the Tri-Valley that I think it would affect us. But any changes they make to keep the Tri-Valley together is going to have a ripple effect. And some of the talking points that we've been sharing in the community are, here's how we think you can adjust that ripple effect so that it works out for everyone. Okay. I see that Mayor Warner has a question. Shall I take that, Sharon?
Yes, please.
Okay. The question I have is what's driving the maps to divide up the Tri-Valley? I mean, what forces are at play here that are making that happen?
Yeah, so great question. The commissioners are aware that they need to do something to fix the Tri-Valley because they had a meeting earlier this week, I believe it was Monday, where they said, let's all share our priorities about what we want to do. And 3 or 4 of the commissioners said, we got to do something to fix the Tri-Valley. These people want to be together. Other people don't want to be with them. We got to fix it. But how do we get in this situation? It's not because they don't realize that we exist. It is because of the ripple effect of other decisions. And I'll tell you, here's exactly how it went down at about 11 o'clock at night, 2 and a half weeks ago. Some of the commissioners wanted to have Tracy in its own San Joaquin County district, as opposed to a Stanislaus district. And it affects a very swing congressional seat currently represented by Congressman Josh Harder. So the summary is, Bob, political forces unrelated to the Tri-Valley were setting priorities that therefore affected what our map could look like. Because remember, congressional seats have to have almost exactly the same population amount. So if Tracy is taken in or out of a district in one area, it completely blew up the maps for all of Northern California. And the LA Times had a great article on it all started with Tracy. And so what they do with Tracy is going to have a big impact on the Bay Area and on the Central Valley. And, Tracy's both a Bay Area community because they have so many commuters. We know that's one of the great benefits of Valley Link is to help with that commute. And yet it's also a Central Valley district as well. It's traditionally been combined with Modesto, which has also become a bit of a Bay Area commuter. So it's politics about how to flip that seat that's a swing seat in the Central Valley, but also the commissioners from San Joaquin County want San Joaquin County to have its own district, and they're doing that by roping in Tracy. Sorry, that was a longer answer than you needed. I hope you feel encouraged that it's not because, you know, somebody wants to keep this person or that person in office, but there are those considerations in backroom conversations. Other good questions?
And that was helpful about Tracy. Thank you, Catherine, for pointing that out to everybody on the call. Okay. It looks like Angelina, and I think probably everyone, you know, Catherine, you had said, you know, these are the 3 different ways, and this is what you need to say, you know, that type of thing. So providing everyone in the chat, or if it's too much to put in the chat, maybe send it to Dawn and we can get it
Send it
sent
out. I'm
to
happy to
everybody.
do that. It will be a little bit, what I can share with you is if you go to, and I'll put it in the chat while Sean Wilson's giving a good presentation, their website, and I'll say, click on contact, and you can do your type in right now. And I will also share with Dawn after this meeting a little bit more. Click this link to do live, and this, and here's the talking points. The big one has got to be keep the Tri-Valley whole. It's 400,000 people, very strong identity together. Combine us with communities that we are more alike instead of ones that we are very different from. Those generally, in the talking points that I've suggested to folks, are communities to the east and northeast, like you may say, this sounds strange, but say Brentwood, Oakley, as opposed to Fremont, Hayward. You know, Brentwood, Oakley shares a lot of our Vasco Road and 580 and wind farms and agriculture like we have, as opposed to going to west of us. That's my suggestion. That there's been a lot of consensus in the Tri-Valley around this. I've worked closely with ITV folks, for example, Tim Sobrani and Lynn Naylor and our local chambers on these talking points. But the main thing is keep us together, combine us with communities that we're more like, and make some suggestions on that. And if you absolutely have to split us up, please don't split one of our towns in half.
Right.
You know, keep those towns whole. And, but I'll provide those with you. And please make time today and each day throughout the next week to provide that kind of commentary, because 2032 is the next time we see new maps. Okay, thank you.
That was great. Thank you, Catherine. Right, I think it's pretty darn clear what we need to do. So we can't say you didn't know what to do or how to do it. That was great. Okay, so now we're going to have Sean Wilson. So Sean Wilson, Dawn, did you want to introduce Sean, or?
I did earlier. Sean, are you ready to roll?
Yes, I'm ready to roll, Dawn.
Oh, are we going to get to see your smiling face?
I'm going to try, but I'm not as good. I got bad reception, but I'll certainly turn it on. But
Okay.
Sometimes I freeze.
Okay.
So here we go. Look, everything that Catherine Baker, our esteemed former Assembly member said is absolutely accurate. We do need to fight for keeping the Tri-Valley together. I'll give you a brief history of our process and the similarities that we share with the state. Two differences that we do not share with the state is the fact that the Board of Supervisors gets to draw their own lines. We don't have a commission. Our public input process is really what drives the formation of our district boundaries. I've been fortunate enough to draw the boundaries in 2001 and again in 2011. And luckily for Livermore, you're not going anywhere. You're going to be in District 1. You were in District 1 in 2001, you're in District 1 in 2021, and you're going to be here tomorrow at the end of the day. So the other difference that I would say different from Congress is that we have a 5% differential, which makes it a little more challenging. One might think it might make it easier, but it actually makes it challenging because when you start moving the lines a little bit, the rippling effect downstream in Oakland and in Hayward and in Fremont becomes very difficult to manage. So although the 5% differential, it sounds like a great way to get to where we need to be, it actually, when you factor in the 27 COIs, and by COIs, I mean communities of interest that Alameda County has identified through the process, it starts having some very rippling effects throughout other portions of the county. And I'll give you an example of that. But first, the board entertained 3 maps. Map A, which kept everything pretty much the same. Map B sort of got rid of Fremont and added Pleasanton to District 1, but then also moved the eastern portion of Hayward into District 1. So that was Map B, which kind of had a rippling effect, as you can see in the Hayward area, because the communities of interest were sort of split and they were having to figure out how to keep those together. So that map is a little funky. And then there was Map C that split Pleasanton and gave all of Sonoma to District 1 and gave District 1 the Castlewood area of Pleasanton and removed about 60–70% of the Hayward area that was indicated in Map B. So the board decided to move forward with Map A. And that Map A is, like I said, very similar to the map that we have today, which again splits the Tri-Valley. Catherine Baker is absolutely correct. We have to fight to keep the Tri-Valley together. The Senate, if you look at the Senate map and the Assembly map and the Congressional map, that Assembly map doesn't make sense. What we want to do is align ourselves closer with a map that keeps Pleasanton all together. So the Board of Supervisors decided, although they said, hey, let's look at Map A, which keeps everything the same and sort of separates the Tri-Valley, let's look at some variations of Map A. One variation of Map A was to split Pleasanton, and it's split around the Castlewood, Ruby Hill downtown area of Pleasanton. That was one variation that was asked for, and we looked at that, and that really, it doesn't make a lot of sense. There was another option by Supervisor Miley to split Dublin. We don't want to split Dublin and retain all of Pleasanton. That map didn't make sense. So there was another map that would get rid of all of Fremont, take in all of Pleasanton, all of Sonoma, and try to give a little bit of Castro Valley to District 1, but we're getting some pushback from a couple of different supervisors on that map. So at the end of the day, we've had our meeting that was last week. We finally got some very strong input from the Tri-Valley to retain the Tri-Valley as a COI, a community of interest. Because like the former assembly member said, we have a lot of similarities and we need to stay together. And it doesn't make sense to split Pleasanton, and it doesn't make sense to retain the same districts that we have before. We can simply remove all of, or about 80% of Fremont, which we tried to do with the map that we brought forward, but we kind of cut into a Afghan community of interest. So we're looking at currently trying to redo that map, which would remove about 40% of Fremont, give District 1 all of Sonoma, give District 1 all of Pleasanton, so that the Tri-Valley can be united. That map, we're going to shop around at our next meeting, probably tonight. And just to give you the background, like I said, we started in April with our process. We've had 12 public meetings on redistricting. By the time we finish, we will have 15 public meetings on redistricting. We have sent outreach materials out in 5 different languages to be as inclusive as we possibly can. And just to give you some data for you data folks out there in terms of the Tri-Valley and how we grew over the last 10 years from 2010 to 2020 when the new census numbers were provided to us. So Livermore had an 8.7% population growth. Dublin, hold on to your seats here, Dublin had a 55.2% population growth, whereas Pleasanton had a 13.7 population growth, and Fremont the lowest at 7.7. So if you look at those numbers, it makes a lot of sense to remove Fremont and keep the Tri-Valley contiguous. The meeting schedule thus far that we have left to hear from the public, meeting today, 6 o'clock. The meeting on the 7th of December, that will be what we hope will be the first reading of the ordinance for our new redistricting. That will be followed by a meeting on the 14th. And that hopefully will be the second reading of the ordinance for the new redistricting lines. If you want to voice your opinion, and I hope that you do, Dawn can give you my email. You can email, you can participate in the meeting. If you need the link, I can send you the link. but I can't plead enough, and I think Catherine did a fantastic job, is we need voices to call in. Like I said, the last meeting we had probably the most that ever called in to keep the Tri-Valley together. And if we can continue that, I think we can make a very strong point to the Board of Supervisors that it's time to get rid of the lines the way they are, redistrict the way they should be, keep the Tri-Valley together, and we can figure out a way. We want to keep Sunol into the Tri-Valley because I think you did mention, Catherine, that it's also a community of interest that shouldn't be cut in two. Now, the counter argument to that we've been hearing from the other side is, look, we have more power if we have 2 supervisors in the Tri-Valley. We have more power that if we have 2 supervisors in Sunol. I've been on the Board of Supervisors for over 20 years. Damn, I'm getting old. And look, I've never seen anything to suggest that it makes a political difference. We have allies on the board, and the Board of Supervisors is very respectful of each and every district. When one district wants something, they rally around and make sure that they get it, and they help them to the extent in which they can. So it's never been a battle of, will we have 2 supervisors in the Tri-Valley, so we're going to be more successful. That's not the way it goes. The way it goes is we have a stronger representation if we have more people fighting the cause and fighting the fight than having 2 supervisors that are going to help you in the social services and healthcare, which is essentially what the county does anyway. All the other things that we do, the sprinkling of funds into nonprofits, that's just icing on the cake. I mean, we're tasked with a legislative role to help with poverty and help with homeless and help with those in need. And that's a county mission and county charge. That can't be changed with political ideologies. So with that, if you have any questions, I'd be more than happy to answer. But again, the common theme here is the Tri-Valley needs to be whole, and we need to hear your voice to keep us whole.
Okay, thank you, Sean. I see Mayor Warner has his hand up.
Yeah, thanks, Sean. The question I've got is, a long time ago, the Tri-Valley was together in the county maps, and if for some reason it got split out, Pleasanton got split out. What is the new map that you just mentioned? How does that compare to the one of a long time ago when we were together? I mean, I think that was split for some political reason. And how does the old, very old map where we were together compare with the one you just mentioned?
Well, it's very hard to compare the maps of 20 to 30 years ago with those of maps today, because the populations have shifted so tremendously. But I can tell you that you're absolutely correct. And if you remember years ago, I don't know if it was maybe 14, 16, or 20, but there was a time where Nate Miley actually represented Dublin and Haggerty represented Pleasanton. That switched. And again, the Tri-Valley stayed separated. I think, to best answer your question is the data suggests 2 things. One, the population shifts in a way where we can be reunited for a first time in a long time. And 2, back then, there was so much heavy development on the east side, or the west side of Alameda County, that we had to carve it out so that they had more representation than we had out in the Tri-Valley. It wasn't until 14 years ago that the boom in Dublin created a shift in population.
So if we want, I think the map that you mentioned you were going to be trying to shop around sounded really good to me, that latest one. How do we refer to that if we want to call in and say we want to support that one?
I could send a copy of that map to Don and everyone on here. I think I have almost everyone's email address. I can do that this afternoon.
And when do we need to get the comments in by?
It'd be fantastic if you can get them in by today, either during the meeting at 6 p.m. or prior to the meeting, and you can email myself and I can get it to the clerk of the board or the clerk of the board. But let me get you the map. And I can also, when I send you that, I can send you the link to the 6 p.m. meeting, so you have that as well for ease of convenience.
Okay, and the other directions as to how we can best contribute, our comments. So thank you.
Yep.
Okay. Oh, okay. Michelle, school district, has a question for Sean.
I just had a quick question, Sean. I was pulling up the draft maps while you were talking. Is it draft A2 that it looks to me like the one that we want to, that includes the whole Tri-Valley that we should be referencing?
I'm sorry, it's A2 with a little tweak. And
Okay.
I don't know if I got it late last night, so I don't think they put it up there yet.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you.
Okay, Catherine?
I don't want to take a precedent over an actual Alliance member getting to ask, but in lieu of another hand up, I'll do this. There have been some 100% supportive of keeping the Tri-Valley together, so thank you for that work. Just as an aside, I host mayor's supervisor's report with Nate and asked him, what kind of feedback have you gotten? And it's been 100% keep the Tri-Valley together. There's nobody who's testified to take it apart, so hopefully that helps. This has to do with if Oakland will have 2 representatives versus 1, because I've seen some commentary about that. Can you comment on what either the likelihood is or what's the status of how this will affect whether Oakland has 1 supervisor or 2?
So just to let you know, Oakland will never have just 1 supervisor. The population is too heavy. The question is, will they have 2 or 3? But getting back to your statement that when you spoke to Supervisor Miley, 100% of the people that he's heard from said keep the Tri-Valley together. He wasn't forthright in his information to you because there is one person that does not want to keep the Tri-Valley together, and that is Supervisor named Miley.
Yeah.
He wants to keep Pleasanton. So let that be known that that's one of the biggest hurdles that we have, is the fact that he wants to keep Pleasanton. And he's made it abundantly clear, despite 100% saying keep us all together. So
I didn't put that on the show because, it's only a 30-minute show, but yes.
Right. So the question is, will Oakland have 2 or 3? I think the best thing for us is we want Oakland to have 3 because then that gives us 1. If we split it with 2, then that third is going to have to come into the Tri-Valley. So, and I know that their supervisor, look, to be honest with you, redistricting could have been done in 10 minutes because the population shifts in Alameda County. There was a 0.003 differential rate. If you moved 1 census tract from District 3 in Oakland into District 5, we'd have the numbers where they needed to be and everything can stay the same. Luckily, that was not, we have a community process to address that actual fact, because if we didn't, if this was 20 years ago, we could have went and just rubber stamped this and been done with it. So thank goodness we have the new federal mandates that allow us to develop COIs, to keep COIs together and go out with a lengthy community process that we're pretty proud of in various language to make sure that we identify these needs. And these needs are very pressing to us. And these needs suggest we need to keep the Tri-Valley together. And I think Oakland will tell you their needs is to keep 3 supervisors in Oakland because they apply for federal funding more than any city in the county. So now they have 3 voices in Washington, D.C. and fantastic for them.
Okay. Great. I'm looking at everyone. Okay, this was a December meeting. Does it?
Well, and there's a lot to digest there, and apparently time is of the essence. I suggest that all of you make note of the information that's been put in the chat. The Chamber Board of Directors is going off-site for our annual planning session, which we will be in until 6 p.m. tonight.
Ooh.
So, yes. So you all on this call, you have the information and the links to go ahead and submit your comments. This is not complicated. We know what we're seeking here. We will weigh in. We still have time to weigh in as an organization, and I will do that when I'm back in the office. But I do urge all of you to go ahead and weigh in with your own comments at these links that were provided to you today. And it's not over yet. So there is time. And Sean, I'm happy to hear that there's an A2 map with tweaks. So we'll be looking forward to seeing that. And we appreciate all the work that's being done. And I'm happy to hear that at one point, one of the arguments was that, well, when we have 2 voices on the Board of Supervisors for the Tri-Valley, and if it's not, the reality, what you're seeing on the ground is like, yeah, it's good, but it's not a deal breaker kind of thing. You only have 5 members. They work well together. They all recognize what the needs are in their individual districts. And at the end of the day, in most cases, they support each other because we're Alameda County. We're not just District 1. So that's good news. But I just wanted to alert everybody to that fact. You will not be getting any emails from me today because after we're done here, we're heading out for our all-day planning session.
Okay, Mayor Werner, so.
Yeah, just along those lines, because we're pretty busy. I just want to make sure that we'll be getting an email with the instructions of how to, from both Catherine and Sean, as to how to do this. Because I can have, people help me do it if I can just flip an email on to someone. So if you can get that to me pretty quick, I can get some comments submitted somehow.
Hey, Bob, text me whatever email because I respect that Don and the board are going to be busy today. If you want to text me the email you'd like me to use, I'll send it to you as well as Don. So you don't have to
I'm
wait.
on the board too,
Oh.
so that's why I'm going to be busy. So that's my problem. I've got another meeting in a few minutes, so
No problem.
text
I'll
you
get
the
it to
email.
you. Yeah.
But he has.
So this is what I would suggest. So it's all on our calendars till 9:30. We have 10 minutes. Catherine, can this be done in 10 minutes? So I say, let's wrap up this meeting and give everybody time to go now do this homework here because we have a busy day. So next meeting is Wednesday, January 5th. Any kind of closing comments, but let's do it.